and welcome to the At Peace Parents podcast. I'm Casey, and I'm here to empower you in your decision-making as a parent of a demand-avoidant child. My goal is to share insights that will generate aha moments and support your connection with your child. I'm a mom of two amazing little boys, one of whom is PDA, and I've worked with hundreds of parents just like you to teach them how to lead their child out of burnout and find the clarity, peace, and sense of community they need. Today is a special episode that we are sharing from the Paradigm Shift program. The Paradigm Shift program is our signature 3-month live program for parents of PDA children and teens. During this session, Donna Georgen, one of our coaches here at Peace Parents and an expert in PDA tweens, teens, and young adults, shared her lived experience as a mother of two now adult PDAers. I hope that you enjoy this powerful story. I just want to tell you a little bit about Donna before I hand over the mic. I met her for the first time in Michigan in person, and I was like, yes, we're meant to work together. She had already sort of started her own business, which was cool, and we joined forces. Donna has a lifetime of caregiving and parenting experience, but she is also professionally the very first person to start the support groups at PDA North America of her own initiative. Many of those groups are still thriving. Donna has worked with me intimately in this program. This is her third cohort. And above and beyond her professional work with At Peace Parents and in the PDA space, Donna to me embodies exactly what I'm trying to teach in terms of radical acceptance and what we were working through yesterday on the live call and what we will be working through in these modules. Donna has experienced constraints and lived with challenges that I've never had to face. And so I've learned a lot from her. You know, she was a single mom. She had a daughter with additional complex challenges that my PDA son does not have. So I have learned a lot from working with and becoming friends with Donna. And I'm just so excited to share her wisdom with you and give you the opportunity to get to know her better. So welcome, Donna. We're happy you're here.
Thank you.
And I'm going to hand over the mic and pin you so that you can share with us.
That sounds awesome. Okay, thank you. I am so glad everybody's here. It's awesome to have you here and be supportive of this conversation that we're going to have together. I'll be talking for a while, but I would like to open it up at the end for questions and insights that you may have that we might learn from you. I'm going to start out and give you a little bit of my background, and I'm going to do it even from more of a professional standpoint. I really feel led this time that there may be parents, whether it's the mom or the dad, who are considering possibly structural changes within the home. And that was something that I needed to come to terms with, and looking at a change in my career. And the message that I'd like to come across with is that you're not alone, and that it doesn't last forever if you find yourself needing to do so. I also want to, of course, jump into, we'll be talking about complex cases. My daughter is a complex case, provide some insights of what I've learned along the way. Teens will highlight indicators, characteristics of teens and why it's different. And then I'd like to wrap it up then touching on each of the 5As and the 5A framework using my own experience, anonymize stories maybe from other parents, and just help you perhaps kind of envision what it might be like as you walk through this process with your teenager. So I will start out by saying that I graduated from Indiana University with a bachelor's in marketing. I jumped into sales and marketing with GTE, which is now Verizon, and Vision, which is now Novartis. And so the corporate environment I loved. It was going well for me. I was climbing the corporate ladder. And then I got married and had my first daughter. My perspective changed a little bit, and I wanted to be home with her a little more. So I became the assistant to the director of a women and children's homeless shelter, and then the assistant to the director of a nonprofit teen center. I share all of this with you because I know some of you may be on a career course and again, maybe feeling like I don't want to give that up. That is part of my identity. And I am sharing that just to say I can relate and not to say that anybody should give up a career, just supporting you and that if you should decide to do that, it will come back around and that you're certainly not alone. So my first daughter was 5 years old when my husband and I became pregnant with our second daughter. And that was when things really began to change in my life. My 5-year-old was complacent, compliant. She was no problem at all. She was just a lovely child, still is. She's a lovely person, but there were no indications. But later on, I would find out that she was internalized. I became pregnant with our second daughter. I'm at home with my mom who has cancer. She's moved in. I'm taking care of her. In the midst of all this, I find out that our daughter, second daughter, it will be Downs when she is born. And my husband, who is both girls' dads, was then thought to have bipolar because that's all we knew back then, right? And it turns out he has PDA. By the time my youngest daughter, Gwen, was 5 months old, I could not manage everything, right? Because after Gwen was born, she had some congestive heart failure, difficulty breathing, not eating well, not sleeping through the night, didn't want to be held by me. Someone else could temporarily hold her, but there weren't a lot of people around to help do that. Is any of this sounding familiar? It turns out she was externalized PDA. Right. But at the time, I had no idea what was going on, nor did the doctors. So they said, because she has these heart defects, let's go ahead and do the heart surgery. So I'm a single mom with a 6-year-old, a 5-month-old baby, and she has open heart surgery. At that point in time is when I realized I cannot carry on my career. And I felt really almost kind of devastated. I felt resentful. In a lot of ways, I was like, why am I having to do all that and give this up? I have my own identity. It was a very difficult period of time. I didn't go into it very easily. So what happened was I ended up staying home, but I still needed to have some sort of income, right? And so I ended up substitute teaching. And I did that for a very long period of time. That was a really good opportunity for me to still feel like I had somewhat of a career. And I could, on any given day as a substitute teacher, call in sick or take a job, which is what I needed with Gwendolyn. And all of this continued, this kind of cycle continued. And Gwen, my younger daughter, still was having all these emotional issues, all these behavioral issues. So for the next 10 years, I'm single parenting. I have a daughter that has these behaviors, who has special needs, right? And then all these medical issues. It was a very, very complex time. During that time, Maggie, my older daughter, is moving along smoothly. She's a star student. She's just moving along. Everything looks like it's just going to be great, right? What I want to say at this point is I don't want to interject so far as complex cases, because if you have a child who has more than one coexisting condition, right? Whether it's you're wondering, okay, maybe it's ADHD or OCD or PANS or Downs. It could be anything. I just want to reassure you that you'll get through this time. It is so layered and nuanced, and it's so sensitive in terms of, for example, we're going to put Gwen on medication to try and help with her behavior. Now, that may impact her medical issues. And so now you're like, okay, well, I'm seeing this uptake in medical, reactions and physical reactions, but I'm seeing things get better behaviorally or back and forth. It is not clear cut. One of the best ways I found to navigate that was to try and create a thread of communication between all of her primaries, so that even though they couldn't talk to each other and share information, they could share it with me. I could then share it with another primary, whether it be psychiatrist or her heart specialist or whoever it was that needed to be involved. So having that type of team effort really was so, so helpful. And so you may find it helpful as well. Those next years with Gwen going through everything she's going through and Maggie seemingly great we reached the teenage years of my girls. What I will say, those 16 years in there, and I don't say this lightly, they were pure hell. they were, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just the most difficult time. And if you have a teenage PDA, or you know what I'm talking about, you didn't hear about PDA until a month, 2 months, a year ago. I hadn't heard of PDA until almost 4 years ago now. And so that whole time, it was just a cluster F. I didn't know what was happening. And it was tough because I felt like a horrible parent. And I knew the right things to do as a good parent. And yet I just couldn't seem to get it right. So the girls are in their teenage years. I discover PDA. And it was that epiphany that we all got, right? It was like, this is what it is. After all the diagnoses, after everything for Gwen that didn't quite make sense, this was it, right? And I was thrilled. I was happy. I was crying. I was all these different things, just so relieved. And then there was a realization of, oh my gosh, now what do I do? And I knew that I could not move forward in my life and not make myself available to at least one other parent out there that feels confused, that feels like they're crazy, they're alone, they're a crap parent. And I was just highly motivated. And so I worked with Diane Gould at PDA North America and started support groups. During that time, I was like, I need to be educated. And so I went through Laura Kirby and worked with PDA UK and got my accreditation in PDA and started on that path. And I knew that was going to be a really important path. Around the same time, my older daughter, Maggie, who's just always been like I said, compliant and wonderful and never any issues, she started having issues, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. But it was really difficult to now look at this and go, oh my gosh, my older daughter is internalized this whole time. And when I learned about all this about PDA, I'm like, yeah, that's what was happening. And I hear and I understand there's a kind of a back and forth. I wish my daughter was more internalized, is what I might hear, but it's actually more difficult to parent an internalized PDA because they may cover that up and mask for so long that when they finally do hit that wall, I call it hitting the brick wall, then they have reached burnout. And as we know, burnout's a more difficult place to come back from. So Casey and I met shortly after that, and I knew immediately, even after all the different training of PDA, that the paradigm shift program and where Casey was coming from in terms of her presenting it as a nervous system disability was spot on. It made so much sense to me that I was thrilled when we had an opportunity to connect and work together. Because listen, we know about the neuroception, right? With the fight, flight, and freeze. But with my daughter having all these other medical issues, I knew that there was something going on with the interoception. So there was the vagus nerve, the polyvagal theory, the fact that vagus nerve moves down and touches the heart and the lungs and the digestive system. How does that impact them, right? Is she really having migraines because of the 2 strokes and a seizure that she had, my youngest daughter, or is it because of PDA? And what I will share with you in terms of a complex case, I wholeheartedly believe one of the best things we can do is to hold on to or look through the lens, the PDA lens, for a period of time, however you think you might be able to do so, right? A week, a month, 3 months, and focus on the accommodations, getting to know your PDA or getting to know yourself through the process. Because once I did that, other things fell away, right? And now to this day, I now know the migraines that yes, there's white matter. It's called residual white matter from the strokes. That is a small part of what affects my daughter. What affects my daughter is the fact that when she begins to become dysregulated and she's triggered, it goes to the fact that she goes to her migraine immediately. Her eyes hurt, her head hurts. And I now know, instead of trying to give her a bunch of medicine and, feeling like, oh my God, is she having another stroke? I now know I need to try and help de-escalate her and help bring her back to a place of felt safety. Okay. So that is something, you're here if you're able to, no judgment, but if you're able to embrace it as much as you possibly can. I'm a big proponent that it does help to parse out what else is going on. And there's other things going on sometimes for sure. So what about my girls? How are they doing now? So we've come through this. I've started parenting as a PDA mom. And I'll tell you more of the backstory as I get into the next section I'm going to go into. What I'd like to share with you is one of the things that I feel like really behooves me. It's the silver lining, right? I hated going through all those years. I hated it. It was torture. But what it did do for me is it brought me to a place that when I heard about PDA, I was like, I'm all in. And as I was applying the accommodations and I was learning about the deep why and going through acceptance and awareness, all of these, it really prepared me to say, I'm doing this. And if things started to get shaky, I was like, I don't care, I'm doing this. Nothing else has worked. And I have tried everything. So in the process, my now 25-year-old, so I started this 3 years ago, my 25-year-old, she did go through burnout. I'll tell you about that. She's my internalized PDA. She has a job. She loves her job. She's doing very well at it. She did not become the scientist or the doctor that I thought she might based on everything that she appeared to be growing up, right? She needed to follow a path that made sense to her. And so after her burnout, she ultimately decided to become a nail technician, and she works at a beautiful salon here in town doing individualized artwork, not stickers or stamps, but she does the individual artwork. People love this about her, and she maintaining a job, has her own apartment, she's engaged. That doesn't mean that's the same story for everyone. I'm just sharing with you how things evolved with Maggie, is my older daughter. But I will tell you, I had to go through some really big radical acceptance before she could reach that place. And I'll share that with you in a minute. So that's Maggie. Gwendolyn is also doing very well. She, at one point, and I'll touch on it, was pushing so hard that she ended up in a mental hospital because I was so certain that the conventional, traditional parenting and all these different, these 10 other different ways we're going to make sense eventually, right? Eventually, it's going to kick in. And it just never did. She came back from that and she went through burnout. And so I found out about PDA shortly after she got out of the hospital. And I had a breakdown, by the way. During that time, I had nothing left to give. I had both my girls. We were going off the tracks, and our lives were plummeting, and I had nothing left to give, which is also why I'm here, because I don't want you to go through this. You know what it feels like, don't you? Where you're like, I don't know if I can do this one more day. I'm losing myself. And that's what happened. And I became a shell of a person. So Gwen's in the hospital. I'm going through my own breakdown. I'm mute. I can't eat. I can't do anything. I came out of that. But again, it was even more determination on my part that I'm going to do PDA. I'm going to do this approach. I'm going to do this type of parenting and support for her and for them. So now my younger daughter, who used to be very physically aggressive, verbally aggressive, come at me. I had to hide my knives. I had to put bells on my door because if she came in the middle of the night, I wanted to know that I was safe. I'd be on my computer doing something and she would become so agitated. One time she took my head and twisted it so hard, I heard a crack. And it hurt. I honestly, thought my neck was broken. It was just like, this isn't real. This is just not real. But after I started doing the approaches, we went, I want to say 2 months without even getting cleaned. For sure, no bath. For sure, no washing her hair. She stayed in her room. It was like anything goes. I'm choosing to do this, and whatever you need. Oh, you need me to bring you food? I'm doing that. Oh, you want me to cover you up with a blanket, and the blanket's sitting right on top of here? Let me do that for you, right? And as I was doing this more and more and more, I would begin to see things change. And it was just amazing. And I thought, yeah, there's something to it. There's something to it. And if you choose to give this a real immersive type of experiment for a week or a month or 6 months, and you begin to see those indicators, you can trust in them. You can trust those indicators and just keep going. All right. I want to talk a little bit about teens and PDA. So I would like to first of all say, and I mentioned this earlier, if you have a tween or a teen PDA, you've been parenting one way for a very long time. And we've all been immersed, integrated into the idea of what a good parent is. It was very difficult initially for me to pull away from that. But once I did, things became much easier. It's like there's no shame. There's no condemnation. There's nothing like if you're sitting there saying, I don't know if this is real or not. No, I don't know. Because we are told and we are raised that this path right over here is a way to raise a good child. This is the way to be a good parent. I wholeheartedly believe it. And it's not that that's not being a good parent, but for my girls, that was not the way that was going to help them. So already, if you have a teenage PDA or you've been parenting a particular way for a long time, give yourself some grace and know if this seems very awkward, it's okay. It may take some time to really get into the groove of things. But I just want you to know that it's never too late. It is never too late. You may have a teen that you're like, I don't know how they're going to live. I don't know how they're going. I don't even know what's going to happen. That's okay, because we're just going to focus on the here and the now. All right. And as you get a little bit stronger in this, you will start to see those changes. So that's one difference with PDA teen. We've been parenting differently for a very long time. Number two, can we have a PDA teen or any PDA without providing autonomy and equality? Is that possible? And see the needle move? No, it's not, because they need autonomy. That autonomy is like air that they need to breathe. So now if you have a tween or a teen, you know that just through the normal progression of their development, there's that other type of autonomy where they are beginning to naturally separate from parents, which can be an oddity because they really, really want you and need your nervous system. But at the same time, they're being a teenager and independent. So that can be challenging. Some may be trying to figure out their own identity, right? And what I would want to say at this point is, as you recognize there's two different types of autonomy going on, I think that when I think about, and as a parent who was conventionally and traditionally parenting Gwen, my externalized PDA, I was certain that I was doing the right thing. I was certain that because I love her and because I was going to stand my ground, that she was eventually going to fall in line, that things were eventually going to work out. And what I realized is the autonomy and equality that she needs shifts my parenting from a place of being in control. We're in control as parents. We're going to teach them this. We're going to guide them here. We're going to make suggestions. That's what we do as parents, right? They're teenagers. You need to start doing this. You've got to start learning that. You need to become this more. And what happened was I thought I had control. And I didn't. I had no control. All the evidence was that it was pushing my girls further into their survival brain. I'm just thinking, what is going on, right? But now that I've been able to move through PDA and understand my girls and understand the nervous system disability, the relationship has changed. And I just share this with you to plant a seed and see if you might envision yourself making maybe a shift here as well. And that is from being in control to having agency. What's the difference? Well, having agency means I'm not controlling them. The agency is not about me doing something or expecting something from them. The agency is, what can I do? What am I going to choose to do? How am I choosing to handle this situation? And the shift went from being an oversight parent to leaning back and saying, I'm going to start just focusing on me. And with that agency, started bringing my girls out of their survival brain. They started being able to utilize their frontal lobe. They started making better choices on their own that I had not suggested, or at this point even strewed or, made an offering to them. And they did that on their own through the paradigm of me letting go and choosing to support them differently. So autonomy and the concept of being in control and questioning, am I really, and having agency. Number 3, hormones. There's 6, by the way, I'm going to mention. Hormones are going to be different with our PDA teens. I don't need to say a lot about this. That's just like a given for sure. And there are some things that can help, but I think part of it is going to be, a measure of it is going to be in acceptance. So when my daughter is having her period, right, I need to accept the fact that we're going to be riding that roller coaster for a while. And rather than where before I'd become frustrated and I'd be like, even though I knew that she was hormonal, it was like, this still isn't acceptable behavior. This is not okay. And now I'm just kind of riding with it. And by being available rather than trying to control, it has made that process so much easier. And the more, if you continue on in this process, the more you do it, the more you will find ways to support your kids as they're going through that hormonal process. Part of that, which is my next point, number 4, is, I did want to say about hormones, is that when we talk about from a neuroception standpoint, even if we've been able to bring down escalation triggers and bring those down, that window has been opened. When they're hormonal, that's going to start to close up, right? And so we can say, well, I know it's hormones, but then we can understand from a nervous system disability that the window has gotten smaller. So number 4, the complexity as they're teenagers in school and social circles starts getting different. It's more complex, more sophisticated. You're not in one school with one group of kids that you're moving around with. And starting from middle school, you have several elementary schools most often coming together. You're probably starting to change classes, so you may not have your safe nervous person with you. You're expected to take on more responsibility as a student. And then when you get into high school, you definitely are moving around from place to place, teacher to teacher. Add to that flirting, dating, sexual orientation, greater exposure to alcohol, drugs, pornography. It's just a lot more. So I know that feels overwhelming. And if you're listening and you have a 9-year-old, you're probably going, holy crap, I don't want this to happen. But you're here now. That's going to make a difference. That's going to make a difference once they move into their tween and teen years. You'll be so much better prepared, I promise. For those of us who jumped in and found out about this in the midst of the teenage years where it's helter-skelter and you're like, I have no clue what to do next. The thing that I have learned is that connection and trust becomes imperative. It's everything. And it's a journey that each parent has to go through to find out what that connection and trust looks like with their PDA. It's through the awareness, it's through the acceptance, it's through recognizing I'm not in control. It's by recognizing that I have agency. It's by saying, I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to watch my child and see how I can support them. And you'll have a plethora of information throughout this program to experiment and practice and do that. And that's what will make the difference. I'm going to give you examples here in just a little bit, okay? So prioritizing connection and trust, it will be everything for you. And if you are like me, and I was a parent who was large and in charge and wanted to be in control and wanted to help guide them, I found differently. Considering the future, you're right on the cusp oftentimes. They're getting ready to graduate, but they can't finish their senior year. Are they going to be able to go to college? Oh my gosh, are they ever going to be able to hold down a job? What is this going to look like? It's scary. And particularly, and I'll share it, but particularly if you have an internalized PDA where all of a sudden things are just like, what has happened here? One of the things for acceptance might be letting go of the future. It's a fear. It's a big fear. I literally I could cry right now because you love your kids and you've been trying so hard to guide them and direct them. And now here you are saying, I don't know what the future looks like, and it's scarier than shit. But if we focus on that, and this is something that Casey talks about that I love, if we focus on that, then our energy is being used in a direction and something we can't control anyway. For whatever energy we have right now, if we can focus on the here and now and the present, and what I can promise you, 99% guarantee you will see evolution with your PDA. What that looks like and the trajectory is going to look different for different parents, different kids. You will see forward movement. And from there, you can make decisions on the future. I will say right now, this is really important that I discovered. I had an idea of what would be an appropriate, what success looked like, right? So for my older daughter, here she is going to school. Well, you go to school, right? I mean, I love school. I was a teacher for a long time, went back for my second degree, wasn't able to finish it, but I believe in education. But I believed that was the way to success. I believed that you go to college, you get a job, you need to start planning for the future, got to pay for your car and car insurance. I had the whole traditional thing planned out. And what I discovered is success, it looks very different. It's no less sweet. It's awesome. But Maggie is not going to be the doctor that she used to talk about being, but she's content. She's safe in her own body. She's doing very well. And by giving her autonomy to choose what kind of future she would have, she chose something she could get behind and believe in, right? So we may need to consider changing our idea of what success or normal is. For example, non-24-hour sleep cycle. I talk to a lot of parents. I myself lived through that going, this is not normal. This is not normal. Who stays up all night and then sleeps all day? We have to change this. And yet, particularly when we think about our teenagers, who's awake at night? Well, hospitals, the police, there's healthcare centers, there are so many jobs, there's factories, there's so many jobs where people work at night. That if their body is telling them that that's what makes sense, maybe we can lean into it, even as a teenager, right? During the summer months, maybe they can work a second or third shift somewhere. Maybe that's what they need. And instead of, I've got to change them and make them, sleep from midnight until 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. Okay. So again, it's just reworking and reinventing. And as Casey said yesterday, that the constraints and the place that we're in that feels like it's impossible and we can't see the future, leaning into that allows us to really open up to other ideas and be creative and see perhaps a different future, but a very, very positive one at that. Okay, the last point for teenager is burnout. So Gwen was externalized, or has been externalized. She reached burnout when I was pressing hard enough of what was acceptable and unacceptable. Behavior towards me, how she talked to me, the way she behaved, what she was and wasn't doing. This is unacceptable. I was never a harsh parent, but I was like, look, this is where we're going with this. That alone triggered her threat response over and over and over again. Gwen ended up in the mental hospital. Maggie, who had been doing beautifully all her life, I was like, thank you, Lord, for Maggie. And I still thank God for Maggie. But it's just that things changed, guys. It's like she started self-harm. She started cutting. She was wanting to hang out with different people that I felt were not appropriate, right? She probably was experimenting with some drugs, and I'm not condoning that. I don't want you to hear me say that. I just want you to hear me say that as I began to understand PDA, I began to look at those situations differently. She goes to college. She graduates from high school by the grace of God. She goes to college, and at the end of the first year, I get a letter saying, your daughter has flunked out of college. She's brilliant. She really, truly is. She's very, very bright. And I hold up the letter and I'm like, and this is right when I was learning about PDA. I'm like, so what is, and she said, Mom, I don't want to go to college. I don't. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, trade school. Back then I was still kind of like, I said, trade school. And she said, no, I don't want to do anything. And I said, it had the epiphany. Hands off, Donna. My pushing her is not going to get her to where I want her to be. It's going to make it worse. And she's going to go deeper in that hole. So she ended up in burnout for a full year. And this is when I'm in a coaching container with parents and they're like, it's been 3 months. And I say, I know. And only you can decide when, how much you feel like you can continue to support in this particular accommodation, recognizing the nervous system disability. Only you can decide that. But I can tell you, my one daughter, it took 6 months before she really took a good bath. My other daughter, it took a year. My internalized PDA, who was masking for 18 years, right? And then when I finally took hands off, she plummeted. It was as if she was carrying a boulder for 18 years. Oh, and then finally set it down, which I think that my theory with COVID is that we have a lot of internalized PDAs because they got to set the boulder down. They finally got to set the boulder. Everything shut down. And I have a ton of parents say it was when COVID happened. And I say, but maybe it could be, I know with my own daughter, setting that boulder down made her feel like, oh, whoa. And she could not bring herself to pick that back up again. She just couldn't. So a year of staying in her room, not bathing, hardly ever coming out, not eating much, right? And then she went from not eating to overeating. A lot of different things going on. But I knew my goal, my role, my agency, the agency that I had was not to try and control or change it, but just to observe and support. So a year later, she says to me, Mom, I think I want to get a job. And I was like, okay, and walked away. And I tell parents, teenagers in the coaching container, we experiment with being a cardboard cutout. No reactions, no suggestions, no questions, no watching them move through the room. And I said, okay. And so a couple of days later, she goes, Mom, I'm serious. I want to get a job. And I was like, super. That's good because you can't be too excited. And so then she ended up getting a job at Michael's and worked there for a year. And she decided throughout that, and she was very dedicated. She wanted to do it. She came to me. Parents are like, well, I want to get my child back in school. And one of the things that we walk through, because I'm never one to say you should or shouldn't have your child in school, that, like Casey said, we are not here to tell you what you should do. But whether they say, I don't want my child in school, I play the devil's advocate, so to speak, and ask certain questions. Well, I want my child in school. And then I go the other direction just to explore, just to see, right? And when they say, I want my child in school, one of the things is, have they expressed that interest at all? Well, they did come to me one time and I said, how do you feel like your response was? She goes, I'm excited. I was, and you're really excited because you want your child to be back in. And so part of the process is learning just to be neutral and allow them to come to you and come to you often enough that you are then saying, okay, this is what I'm hearing. They're repeating it to me. And then it's like, so Maggie says, Mom, I think I want to go to cosmetology school. So on the inside, I'm like, but on the outside, I was like, and again, walked away. She came back a month later. Mom, no, really, I think I want to. That's fine, honey. Whatever you want to do. Came back 2 weeks later. Mom, I want to do this. Will you help me? I'm on the computer. I need your help. I can help. And helped her. I said, is this all you need? Because, I wanted to be there and go, here, and they want that. What do you think about? And, no, I just said, is this all you need? And she said, yeah. And I went, okay. She went through school on her own. And as I said, she's just doing very, very well now. It took time. It took a change in me, and I'm gonna get into some examples, okay? I want to get into the 5A framework. The 5A framework, we all know Casey is amazing, right? She's just like, she's been gifted. She was meant to do this. Okay, I'll stop. But anyway, what I would say is that if you're like me and you read this stuff and sometimes you get goose pimples like, yes, then trust in it, right? Trust in it. Okay, so awareness to me is kind of like, so we know about the nervous system disability, right? We know what makes it hard in awareness is, okay, they have a nervous system disability. Oh, so now you're saying it's cumulative? Oh, but it's not just cumulative, but it's fluctuating. So, oh, it's down here today. Oh, it's up here tomorrow. Oh, it's off the top. Oh, nope, we're coming back down. We're coming back down. I have no game plan. I'd like to know what I'm doing. I'd like to know where I'm going. And that's not the way this is. And so part of the awareness is recognizing really some of the uniqueness of them being PDA with a nervous system disability that is subconscious, reflexive. It is can't, not won't, and that they are trying to find a place of safety. I come back to this often. This is not as if, oh, well, I've gotten training and I've been mentored by Casey. And so now, I've got it together. I still will see behavior, or I will look at indicators and say, okay, what do I know? What do I know? When everything inside of me sometimes is saying, you know what I realized? Manipulation. Your child, for years, your child is manipulating you. And do you know what I realized? They were, in order to find a place of safety. If I had a bear in front of me and I could manipulate the situation and get past feeling like I'm going to die, hell yes, I'm manipulating. But it's a different type of manipulation, right? It's not from the frontal lobe where I'm going to make you do what I want to just for the sheer pleasure of, no, it's a survival drive to find safety. And this is what I come back to all the time, guys. Awareness. This awareness and acceptance in a coaching container. Understandably, parents are like, let's fix this. How do I fix it? Which we'd start to look at accommodations, not to fix, but to support, right? But even in that context, we're still coming back to awareness and acceptance, because to the degree that the accommodations are, I believe, this is my belief, successful, is in direct correlation to the awareness and the acceptance. There is no judgment in this. This is a journey, guys. And let me tell you why it's a journey. We've talked about awareness just now, acceptance. Acceptance is, okay, we know why these particular strategies, these behavioral approaches, we know why they don't work, right? There's like, for me, in the awareness, there was like another layer. It like transcended my understanding of why the behavioral approaches weren't working. It transcended that, and it needed to become part of just who I was. Right? I had to feel it. I couldn't just recognize it. I had to feel it. And so if awareness is the pie and there's all that information in there, to me, acceptance is like taking a pie and cutting it into all these different pieces. And everybody's number of pieces are going to be different. But within that acceptance, you have a piece of pie that's like, and they each have an impact on deepening. Will they always be PDA? There's the question. Is there a level of acceptance that has to happen? Am I neurodivergent? There's another piece of the pie, right? That you have to work through for acceptance. What are my parents going to think? What's my family going to think? Do I have a spouse or a partner who's on board? All of these different pieces are part of the acceptance pie. And so I share that with you to say, to me, this is probably the hardest component, part of the framework to really grab hold of. But two things. One is it will take time. It will take time. If you feel frustrated, please don't give up. Sometimes just knowing something, like Casey will say, just knowing that you are uncomfortable inside your body, that's enough. Just sitting with that uncomfortableness is the first step. You having a question in your mind that you don't have an answer to, that's the first step. Later on, the answers will come or become much more clear. I don't know. My partner's not on board, and that's okay. Feel the discomfort of it. And perhaps maybe for me, it would be leaning into following through on what I know to be true. By the way, coming full circle, my ex, when my youngest was 5 months old, as I was moving through PDA with my daughters, he started coming back around again just by the universe making it happen. And he would see and hear me talk about the girls and how I was doing things differently. I was not offering that up to him. I was like, you do your own thing, brother, because I'm not going there. But he said, I think I'm PDA. I said, do you think so? And inside I'm like, well, hell yeah, you are. But the point is that this acceptance piece may be just about you, But once you move through this, I'm still moving through it, guys. This is not like I've reached, and Casey says that too. Kendall will say the same thing. We are evolving and learning, right? What I can share with you for myself is that not only did I become what I think is a more well-rounded parent, but I became a more well-rounded Donna, not mom, not sister, not, aunt, none of that, not ex-wife. I just became more whole. And I'm still moving through letting go of perfection, right? And I'm still letting go of some of the other things that want to grab onto me. But it's a process. And I just want to encourage you, if for no other reason, I mean, certainly for your kids, but when you're in it, and sometimes it's easy, understandably for sure, to feel resentful about the whole situation. I want to just encourage you that very, very, very likely you will find a gift just for yourself in this as well. All right. So awareness and acceptance, can't say enough about that. The indicators, let's talk about it from a teen perspective. I'll make it quick. I probably won't get to, I was going to touch on boundaries, affirmation and advocacy, but those I'm going to probably wait on, but we'll wait on those, but let's do indicators. Okay, so let's jump into some examples. A parent says, an indicator for me would be if my daughter spent more time with me. I mean, we're hearing about connection, closeness, connection, and trust. She stays in her room. I want to see her come out and spend time with me. I want that connect. You're telling me that's important. How do I do it?